Okay, welcome back to Going Beyond Wolverhampton. I'm your host, Akmal Rafiq. Joining me today on today's show is Rubab Haider joining us today. She's a trainee lawyer currently, and she's here to share some advice on what it's like to study law and what it's like to be a trainee solicitor as well. Thank you for coming on today, our show, Rubab. How are you feeling today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, it should be fun. You have a very interesting profile, so it'd be good to kind of dig into it and see if you can share any advice with our audience. Okay, so first thing I want to ask is, so you studied law at university. What made you want to study law?
I'll be honest with you. When I was at school, it was very much looking at what I was good at and imagining what kind of thing that I'd want to be doing as I grew up. I had a very sort of basic understanding, which you do at school, to be honest. You don't really understand what jobs consist of at that point. And I knew that I loved like essay writing subjects, and I loved that sort of like analytical kind of patterns of thinking, and like the problem solving and all of that stuff. And at that point I thought that all led to sort of like a humanities career. And then I was looking at what kinds of careers I'd like, and I always liked the idea of being a lawyer. It seemed really interesting. It seemed like you could do exciting work, and I think it just was kind of a natural progression. There was a point at which I wanted to do geography, but I think I'm glad looking back that I did law, because it was a good degree to do, but it was also a good way to just become a lawyer, because I was more interested in being a lawyer than studying law, if that makes sense.
Okay. How do you link law to like what you're studying at school? Because obviously you don't study law at school. You study say humanities and stuff. So like, how were you able to make that link?
To make the link in terms of studying it, or
yeah, pretty much.
I think at school maybe I didn't really. I think you start making decisions at that point on the basis of like, or at least I did, and I don't know if everybody does this, but like, what do I want to do rather than what do I want to study? Like, it was very much a vocational decision for me of like, this is a degree that gets me to where I want to go. And I'm sure like we'll touch upon this at some point, but I think, and as I said, like, something like geography, which actually just contradicts my point earlier entirely, but for lawyers, often a lot of people go into law as a degree because for similar reasons. They're good at humanities, they like the idea of being a lawyer, but studying the law is really, really different to practicing the law. And I guess I'm not really answering your question, because that's the thing, like the link to like the studying law wasn't necessarily the thing that I was looking at. It was more of like the link to practicing law, like when I was looking at, okay, what am I good at and what could I continue to be good at as a job. And I think going back, maybe it would have been an idea to look at like wider subjects that give me a broader perspective, because I think I wanted to be a lawyer regardless, and I would have worked in law, but it might have been nice to do something different for my degree subject, if that makes sense. So the link was tenuous at best, because it was more about like the career than the degree. But again, it's a really valuable degree to have, and it's taught me a lot and gave me a really good grounding. So good decision overall, but I might make a different one if I went back, which is very contradictory. But
okay, so if you were to go back, then what would you have taken geography then, or were you taking?
Maybe, but this is what I was saying to you earlier. Maybe I would have been a computer scientist, but I freak out when like my phone starts doing a software update, so maybe that wouldn't have been a good idea. But I think stuff like that is really interesting. We're in a world now where sort of the digital world is becoming so important. Like, it is the turning point of a lot of most of our lives, to be honest, and especially post-corona. Everything we do is online, or 99% of what we do is now online. And I think, again, as I was saying, you can't replace sort of human interaction, but to a large extent, we are replicating it online. So I think, something like computer science or like, stuff like that, I find that really interesting. And even within the law, like, what I find really interesting at the moment is, you know, stuff to do with like intellectual property, and that often becomes about, you know, data, and you'll understand that, like, you know, data science and all of that stuff, which again is way beyond me. Like, I have such a surface level understanding of it, but I find it really interesting. So maybe something like that. But yeah, it would have probably been another humanities, or just, you know what, something completely like way out there that would have allowed me to do way more stuff at university, because I think law was good. But for instance, at my university, they didn't let me take modules like I would have loved to do like a language alongside it, which was something that King's offered to other degree subjects. So some of my friends who studied, say, for instance, English or like liberal arts, or, you know, even medicine, like, were allowed to do like a module in I don't know, any language that they really wanted to. And I think that's really valuable, because I think your degree is one part of your development. You know, being able to study law or medicine or engineering or X, Y, and Z, like, very, very valuable. But the broader stuff is often, you know, where you can really maximize your value. And, you know, that then often fell to me at uni. And I mean, like, very few university students, maybe it's just me, but very few university students are like 100% productive all the time. So you only have like a certain amount of time that you actually want to spend studying. And yeah, I wish I'd done something that just gave me a bit more flexibility. But it just means that now I have, you know, more of an impetus to kind of do the things that I didn't do at uni. So yeah.
Yeah, I think a law degree is kind of different like that, because there is like a checklist of things that you do need to study before you become an actual lawyer. Like, there's
Yeah.
certain modules you need to take and so on, whereas like most qualifications, unless you're doing medicine, don't require that. Like I do,
Exactly.
like I studied maths, for example, at uni, and in my masters I was able to do like German as one of my outside modules.
That's so
So
cool. Yeah.
you could do something very different like that, for example. So when it came to applying for law then at uni, like, what was the plan then? So what kind of subjects did you take? Or like, was it, okay, I've studied this, whatever, I'm just going to go apply for law now? Or was it like a lot of planning going into it?
So I did for my GCSEs. I can't actually remember what I did for my GCSEs. I'm not gonna lie. Geography, history.
I don't think GCSEs are very important right now. Like, I think it's more to
Oh,
A levels and so on. Because
yeah.
GCSEs, they don't really look at, they just look at your grades, don't they? They only care about maths and English.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. So for A levels, I did geography, history, English literature, and I did maths at AS level. I didn't take it to A2.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I would have loved to be one of those people that did a maths degree, but it sadly wasn't for me. But yeah, so I did that at A level. And then, yeah, as I was saying, I had a really incredible form tutor in sixth form, who, you know, pushed me and encouraged me to sort of think about what I wanted to do. And my school also pushed us to think about what we were going to do from quite early on. And we were always presented with options. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were very lucky in that regard, that they were proactive in showing us what the options were. But you know, now if I'm talking to any kids who are doing like A levels or even GCSEs, as much as, yeah, your school can help you out, I think it's really important for you to understand that there's a lot of power in your hands, and that the options are essentially very much determined by what you look at. So start doing research from early. Like, you know, we have LinkedIn now. I don't think we had LinkedIn, or I didn't know about LinkedIn when I was at school. And it would have been a really great opportunity to like reach out to people who, you know, have even been to the universities that you're looking at, or have done interesting degrees. Or, you know, maybe if I'd have done LinkedIn, I would have seen someone who was doing, I don't know, like aeronautical engineering, or like maths or Comsci or anything like that. And just talking to people, like, people are so willing to help a lot of the time, and if they're not, you don't really lose anything from talking to people. So I think, you know, and if you're not comfortable with that, obviously you can reach out to universities, or you can just look on their websites, or take an interest in your own future, is what I would say. And that's what I would say to myself looking back, that yeah, you know, I put in some thought of like, these are the things I'm good at and this is what I could continue to be good at. But there were so many more options out there than I realised. So yeah.
So you went to King's College London. What's it like studying a law degree at KCL?
It's interesting. I mean, studying any degree is completely different from school. But we were in the heart of London. And as I said, I grew up in quite a small town. So that change was really, really different on a personal level, but on like an academic level, you are often being taught by professors or tutors who are like top of their field, and it's what you make of it essentially. And I think that about any degree it's what you make of it. And I enjoyed my time at university, and I didn't always enjoy studying law, but I don't think anybody really enjoys studying their degree most of the time. But it was really, it's a very conceptually interesting degree. And when you've got professors and tutors who are passionate about what they're teaching you, it makes a big difference. And we had you can be doing something as like theoretically dry as land law, but my professor that did all the lectures for it was like super invested and made the lectures like really interesting. My tutor was just really, really incredible and invested in making sure that we understood things and breaking things down. So I think that was a big part of it, was that you do get access to people who really understand their field and are really good at what they do, but also really invested in making sure that you benefit if you're willing to put in work, and if you're willing to go and ask questions. Like, I'm very much an independent study person as well. I like to do a lot of my work by myself and do that stuff. So there's very much the flexibility for you to do either. You can either be the person that goes to every single lecture and is there at the front of the lecture hall, or you can attend the things that you have to attend and then be watching things online, and still you get the same level of support, and people are very happy to help out. And it's such a huge university as well, that there was such a diversity of things you could do. There were so many people that you could get involved with, so many societies that you could do, and you're in London. Like, it's really, really incredible to be at university where you're in the city of London, and it's great. And I sometimes think maybe I would have liked campus uni a bit more, and like that was definitely something that I thought about while I was at uni, but because you would have had more of a student vibe, whereas we were very much just like, you're walking like by the Shard and then all of a sudden you're at King's College campus. It was very much just, it's weaved into London, but that's something that takes getting used to, and once you're used to it, it's incredible. So it was a good time.
Okay, yeah, I agree with the point of like moving to a city as opposed to a campus. Like, I had a very long deliberation myself of going to LSE and Warwick, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to London or go to a campus uni. And I think it was like May time by the time I actually decided, like the very last day of UCAS, okay, yeah, I'm going to LSE. But like, it's been, and I'm pretty much haven't looked back since then. I think it was a good decision for me in the end. But
because you're right across from the Holborn campus, right? Like our Holborn campus,
Holborn and
LSE
Strand
has
are
the
right next
most
to each other.
amazing library. That like LSE is so strict with not letting other people into their library.
And the library sucks. I'm gonna be honest. Like, it has the most awkward staircase. Like, it's this space to go up and down, and also you can never get a seat there either. So
it's so studious as well. Everyone is so serious in there. I couldn't.
Yeah, it's stressful. I like working in Morn Library preferably, because Morn's
Really, I hated the Morn Library.
Really.
Yeah, all the lawyers went to the Morn Library, and I just couldn't.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. So like, I didn't see anyone I knew at Morn Library, so like, I didn't really care. These are strangers.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So yeah, it is quite nice for me to go to the Morn.
To be honest, everyone was nice. There was just so many people that you know there again, so it's just very much like, if you're going to study, you actually can't. It's very social. So
where were we? We're talking about Kings, what city there? So on the academic side of Kingsman, what was like your favorite module to study there? Like, what did you find most interesting when you studied law?
So I really enjoyed intellectual property. I thought that was really interesting. It's something that I'm interested in, potentially doing in practice. I think there's just a lot of really, really, fresh and exciting stuff happening in that area. It's very much a developing area of law. Obviously, we've had a lot of in recent years with GDPR and all of that stuff. There's a lot more focus on data protection as we're going online, and IP becomes a part of that. So that's quite an interesting area generally, and something that I enjoy. But I also really liked, in my third year, I did a clinic called the Legal Clinic, which was essentially a pro bono clinic, where we as students were, assigned little firms, we called them, and it was like a group of 4 students per firm. And you were given 4 cases over the course of the year. And, we took it from sort of start to finish. And obviously we were supervised, like we couldn't do anything without supervision, but it was so practical. And it was so cool to do something that wasn't just like theoretical study. Because the theoretical study of law is really, it's really, really different. It's very much, you're looking at principles, you're looking at concepts, and it's all really, as I said, conceptually interesting. But it's hard to relate it back to real life sometimes, which is what you think you're going to be doing when you're studying law. So this was very much what we thought we were going to do. But for instance, we got 4 cases. You get given your client sends in a request. And then the supervisor sends it on to you, and then you do your initial research, and we would do all of the research. We would formulate an interview. Then we actually did the interviews with the client in person, no supervisor there, and then afterwards you're responsible for doing all the research and providing them with a note that basically talks about it, tells them their legal advice essentially. And obviously again, our supervisor had to sign off on it and whatever. But yeah, that was just amazing. Really excellent experience. And I had such a nice firm of girls as well that I worked with, and it was a real you actually start working like you're working in a team. And our supervisor was really, really good as well. So that was really cool. And then in my final year, I also got involved. So I did an intercollegiate module at SOAS, and I did Islamic law there. And that was just so good. It was, really different from King's, because by the time I got to third year, and I'm sure you felt this as well about LSE, but by the time I got to third year, I just needed a break from King's. I needed something different. It was a lot. And law is a very competitive degree. There's definitely some people who I really liked from there, so friends from there that I am still really, really close to these days. But it can be a very competitive environment, so it's not often very pleasant. And people got more calm as the years went on, but you definitely need a break. So doing that was amazing. The lecturer for that, and again the tutor for that actually as well, was so passionate and was so excellent, and I really enjoyed it. And again, another area of law that I'm interested in is Islamic finance, and I did that with a society at King's, Islam as a faith, but then taking it from the legal side of it, which takes your personal into you start to be able to analyze it from a legal perspective. It's just really, really interesting subject matter. My final year was just really, really good year basically.
Sounds like your last year at King's was a wonderful time, Ben. Around all your favorite modules were pretty much in that last year.
Yeah, my modules were so good that year. Yeah,
I agree with the point that you made regarding taking a break from the university as well, especially when you go to more of these competitive universities. They may not realize it, but it can be quite in your face about certain things, and it's good to just take a step away from that kind of stuff. Which is one of the reasons why my master's was at King's and not LSE again, because I'm not sure, it's a weird kind of stress to deal with, and change environment is always quite nice, even if it's across the road.
No, yeah, definitely.
So yeah. It's definitely nice to have that. So one thing I want to touch on there that you mentioned is that like you take an interest in Islamic law and in Islamic finance, you said, and you were part of a society as well at King's. So
Yeah.
what did you get up to as part of the society? And
What did I get up to? What mischief did I cause? Um,
yeah,
so no, limited mischief, but a really interesting society. So I came onto it in my first year. I think I was just, doing research or whatever, and then in my second year I was the vice president for it, and then my third year I became the president of the King's Society, and then the president of the sort of consortium of university societies. So the Islamic Finance and Ethics Society is a consortium, and they love that word. It's a consortium of university societies spread across King's, LSE, UCL, and I think it used to be the CAS, but I'm not sure if the CAS has anyone anymore. But it's a society that aims to look at, financial problems or just, the general financial world that we have in through the lens of Islamic finance and the principles of that. And it often sounds very, very niche, and it sounds very much like, oh, it's something that only Muslims would be interested in, for instance. But a lot of these principles are very much genuinely financial principles, and they're very much like, risk sharing and reward sharing, and it's about, I think when I was the president, for instance, and myself and one of my best friends, but also my vice president, we wanted to kind of look through a lens of a very like broad understanding of the principles that underpin Islamic finance, because they are in their essence, from my understanding, ideas of that are kind of like you create a moral economy, it's sometimes called, and that includes concepts such as intergenerational equity and intragenerational equity, and it looks at things which, again, like stuff like green financing, because that's leads into like sustainability, and even stuff like predatory lending, or practices that are maybe a bit more frowned upon now after a couple of financial crises that we've had. It really has mechanisms to deal with all of that stuff in a sort of proactive way. And obviously, in practice, it's very much. I think it's like a $2 trillion industry or something like that. So it's also very huge and very relevant now, and it's growing very rapidly. So it was very interesting. Again, as I said about the legal clinic, it was a more practical understanding of what law can be, and a practical understanding of how law can help real life problems. And I loved that society. It was one of the things that I really enjoyed the most at university, was doing something that I was genuinely interested in academically, but being able to look at it from a practical perspective. So, and it gives you a lot of responsibility as well. So third year for me was quite busy, but it was really enjoyable as well, because I was doing a lot of stuff that was that I was personally interested in.
So moving on to away from university then. So obviously now you're a trainee solicitor, and obviously there's a path you take to get to that position now. So can you explain what your path is and like what you kind of did along the way to help you?
Yeah, lots of lucky mistakes, I think.
So start back like in first year maybe when you decide, because obviously when you do law you can either become barrister or solicitor, or not even become a lawyer as well. So like what made you decide you want to go down this like path in the first place, and then
for sure. So it's what you said earlier as well, like to become a lawyer. So I guess I'll start with that. To become a lawyer, you do have to do what's called like a qualifying law degree. It might have changed now, but I still think you have to do the 7 core modules. So that's like contract, property, trusts, etc. People can Google it. And so you either have to do a law degree, or you used to have to do the GDL, which is the graduate diploma in law. I think now it has changed.
Yes, so it has changed now, but I've got the name of it, but like it does the same thing as the GDL.
It's the SQE, solicitors qualifying exam.
Yeah.
So yeah, the way I did it, for instance, I did law and then I did the LPC, which is the legal practice course. Again, you have to do that to be able to become like a practicing solicitor. Obviously, there are ways that you can do it by doing like apprenticeships or all of that stuff, which is really valuable as well, and good avenues into it. People start as paralegals or people start as legal assistants and then eventually get hired on as well. So this absolutely is not the only way to do it. It's just the way that I did it. So yeah, I did the LPC and then came onto my firm now. But I think now you don't have to do the LPC or the GDL, so it's just worth Googling it. I have no idea about the process now because I was very lucky. Well, not lucky because it seems like a really good system, but yeah, we just were the year before it got put into place. But that's how I came into being a trainee solicitor. But deciding between solicitor and barrister, for me, I knew that I liked, all the cliches. Like I liked working in teams. I think it's actually really important for me to work in a team. I really enjoy talking to / working with other people. Whereas barrister life, it seems a lot more solitary. You're often doing work by yourself and you might be liaising with other barristers, you might be liaising with solicitors, but often you are doing, and you might have a junior barrister or you might have a senior barrister, X, Y, and Z, but you're often doing a lot of your work independently, which some people really, really love, but it didn't appeal to me. And, thinking about what was important to me as well, doing your own advocacy wasn't something that was always super important to me. And I think that's, from what I understand, like a lot of my friends who went into being barristers, that was something that was really like quite important for them, was doing their own advocacy. But that wasn't so important for me. But also now solicitors are but more and more being granted higher rights of audience. So that means that you can, apply to speak in court. But also, for instance, the firm that I'm at, it's a US firm, so there's less of a distinction in that sense between like the strict distinction. So a lot of the associates are able to do their own advocacy. We have they run advocacy courses and whatnot, and you are more able to do advocacy. So there's opportunities for it. So it wasn't very much like I wanted to be a barrister. So that's how I think it's trial and error as well. I went to I did mooting at university and I'd done debating before, which I enjoyed, but mooting just wasn't something that I was like, yeah, I'm really, really interested in this. Whereas the negotiation kind of style stuff and even, going to talks by chambers or talks by law firms, like solicitors firms, I just enjoyed the solicitor side a bit more, I think. So that's how I decided to become a solicitor. And then deciding to become a lawyer in general, as I said before, I think I thought from the beginning that I wanted to be a lawyer. Like I studied law to be a lawyer. So I think in some respects, I very much looked at law from the off. And I looked at other stuff actually in my first year. Rogue stuff like urban planning and all of that. Yeah, very, very out there stuff. I don't know why, but I mean, it's really, really interesting stuff that I couldn't tell you anything about now. But at that point, I knew everything about it. Because I'd kind of studied law to become a lawyer, I just really wanted to give it a go. And then I was part of RARE, which is a recruitment agency based in London, set up by lawyers or ex-lawyers, I think. And with that, I went through to, I went to their client law firms. I think they have 11 client law firms, or they did while I was there. And they're commercial law firms. And I really enjoyed going there, and I really enjoyed going to the firms and seeing the types of work they did and where they were working, especially. And again, I was really interested in project finance, green finance, Islamic finance. Islamic finance was a big driver for me when I was looking at firms and I was looking at who does this kind of work. And it was often, your commercial law firms doing the kind of Islamic financing work that I was interested in. So it was very much a natural progression for me of, okay, I've decided I want to be a solicitor. I've decided the kind of areas that I'm interested in. And then what kind of firm am I going to go for? And, they're doing incredible, really interesting work, and you're working with incredibly smart, motivated, hardworking people who are doing some really novel stuff a lot of the time on some really interesting cases. And I think I looked at it, and I researched it, and I got a taste for it, like as in going into the open days and whatnot. And I thought, yeah, this seems exactly like what I'd want to do. So I think very much what I'd say is it's really worth, again, same as universities, it's worth going to places, and it's worth doing your own research, and it's worth going and seeing whether that's something that you'd want to be involved in. And maybe this leads more into like, the actual my job kind of thing, but doing vac schemes, for instance, so vacation schemes are like legal internships. Doing those were the best things I did for actually deciding that I wanted to do this career, because you just get a different flavor. You get an understanding of what the culture of a place is like, but also what the work is like, and you have to have done your research beforehand. But I think definitely just getting as wide experience as you can, because you're never going to know until you've done it, basically. Yeah.
Okay, and you obviously mentioned that you did vacation schemes here as well. What and you said like a legal internship. So what exactly is a vacation scheme? Because when my friends were doing law, for example, a lot of them were talking about vacation schemes and it's how hard it is to get one. So can you say like what was it like actually doing a vacation scheme?
To be honest, the vacation schemes were super fun. Basically, by the time you've got your vacation schemes, hopefully, you've really drilled down the fact that you have done all of your research, and you've investigated why you want to apply and whether or not it's kind of the right thing for you. And often on your vacation scheme, they're seeing whether or not you're a good fit in the firm and whether you're competent. And you're seeing whether or not you're a good fit as well. So you're kind of, it's a two-way process. They're assessing you, you're assessing them. And once you find a place that feels like it fits, then that's kind of that's what I felt like the process essentially was finding a place that fits and that you fit as well. And I think that's what it came down to. So I did two vacation schemes, both really firms that I really like and that I really respect. And it really came down to, at the end, what firm was doing the work that I wanted to do, more of the work that I wanted to do in the areas that I wanted to do it in, and had more opportunities for me to do the types of things I'd want to do, or for opportunities for professional growth, whether that be, working with international offices or going to our international offices, or whether that be, more the practice areas that you want to be involved in, or whatnot. And both of them had the practice areas that I wanted to be involved in, and all of that stuff. But so it was, really drilling down to what is the work that you want to do, and where do you want to be working, what kinds of, like, not even what kinds of people, because to be honest, across the city the standard is really excellent. But yeah, you're at that point kind of looking for a cultural fit as well. So I think that's the big thing with the vacation schemes. At the end of your vac scheme, you usually get an exit interview, which is just interviewing for the training contract. And you're assessed on work that you've done during your time on the vacation scheme as well.
Okay, and how long is the vacation scheme normally? About 2-3 weeks, or is it a bit long?
2 or 3 weeks, yeah.
Okay, and you reckon that's enough time for them to get a fair assessment of you, or you reckon it should be longer or short? I think that's quite short.
I mean, compared to like your banking, which is what, like 8 weeks or whatever.
8-10 weeks sometimes. So
yeah, I think so. I mean, for instance, the process that we had to interview was in my time, back in my day, it was like,
you sound like an old lady now, just describing her own thing. Back when I was a kid, you're like 23.
Yeah, people ask me for advice now, and I did my vacation scheme in 2018. Like, that's 3 years ago now. And I often feel like maybe I shouldn't really be giving advice anymore. Like, not that like, can't remember what happened on them, but more in the sense of processes change. So it's really important, again, for people to do their own research. Yeah, so there was like loads of interviews, basically, like, 2 or 3 interviews before you actually get onto the vacation scheme. So, and you have to write an application, and that's often what they're also assessing you on, is what is the quality of your written application? How did you answer our questions? It's all of that kind of stuff, which are really important skills as a lawyer. And, then you'll have like maybe a video interview, maybe there'll be, what's in glazes, or all of those kinds of like tests and aptitude things and whatnot. So it's quite an involved interview process. So by the time that you even come to the vacation scheme, they've got quite a good idea of like, who you are, and they know what they're looking for, essentially. So I think that makes it easier for them. But yeah, I think the vacation schemes are a good length of time. I don't know how the bankers, and I don't know like how people do it. 8 weeks.
Yes, it's an endurance test, if anything, because obviously you need to be impressing for 8 weeks. Impressing for 2 weeks, I think, is not as bad, but impressing for 8 weeks straight is very intense for a lot of these people.
I think that's the thing. I think they're kind of seeing if you can hack it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure. Like, I think with law as well, you need to hack it as well, because you also have quite long hours as well.
Yeah,
you can't really tell that from a vacation scheme, can you?
I mean, I think the thing is, when you sign up to do one of these careers, as with most careers, to be honest with you, when you sign up to do a job, you are kind of, and especially with these corporate jobs, like, there is just so much like pomp around them. Not pomp, actually, that's the wrong word. There's so much like
prestige.
There's people build them up kind of thing. So you know what you're signing up for. So it's, when you've signed up to a vac scheme, like, most people have already accepted that that's what they're signing up for. It's, all of the people that apply, and all of the people that get in are intelligent, they're capable, etc. But it is just often about the luck of the draw, and it is often about like, cultural fit as well. And I think that's what your vacation schemes are doing, because, for instance, GradRec knows what they're doing. They've looked at the applications and they've gone through all of them, and they're seeing who they're assessing you during your interviews to see whether or not you're someone that can take this. Like, what have you taken on during university, or like what kind of person are you? And yeah, the vac scheme is just, again, I think, a cultural fit a lot of the time. They do work, but they're not like, they're not like you have to stay until 11 p.m.
Yeah, investment banking schemes. I know some people who are saying like 1 or 2 in the morning on their internships. So.
Oh my god, no.
Yeah, it's not.
Also, like, bankers, like, don't people like wake up at like 5 a.m.?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but to be honest, they earn the money. Like, that's what they're doing. Like, for example, like my friends, they were friends at bank, for example, like they have ridiculous hours, but they're making much more by myself. But like, but I have a life outside of my work,
Yeah.
But then again, in a few years' time, they're the ones who can be laughing. Unless they get trapped in the system.
I think it's just about what you put value on in life. I don't think there's any kind of like objective way to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But then again, a lot of people nowadays are like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in this for a few years and leave. But then a lot of people just get stuck in the system and don't end up leaving. So yeah, it's a lot of decisions you want to make. Like, but yeah, but obviously now moving ahead after university then. So I'm not going to talk about LPC because, as I say, it may be a bit outdated or may not be useful. So on your actual work as a trainee solicitor then. So how long have you been a trainee solicitor for?
Not long, to be honest. I think it's
Did you start this year or last year?
This year. So I took 6 months off after doing my LPC, because we had the option to either join in September or March. I was meant to be traveling. Miss Roma ruined that.
Sadly, accidentally.
I know. But yeah, so I started in March, so it's 3 months maybe.
Okay, so it's been fairly short then. So like, what's it like being in like your first 3 months? And has it been?
It's good. I think I mean, I just had my mid-seat review, and like, I was just saying this, like, I'm finding my feet now, and it's interesting, and it's there's a lot of new stuff, but I think that comes with, a job in general. but we're working on interesting things. And I guess this is anyone at a junior level. You're often doing things which are like, support work. So there is a lot of support work rather than, and you see the substantive work being done, and you're often helping that substantive work being done, or, you're doing like little bits for it or whatnot. So the actual substantive work is really, it's just really huge as well. Like some of the stuff that you're working on is just genuinely, the scale is, you can't quite comprehend it sometimes. So it's really interesting in that sense of just the level at which people are operating on. And it's really good because you are working with, again, such intelligent people who are really operating at a really excellent level. I see some of the partners or associates doing advocacy, or they're drafting or whatever it is, and it's just really, really cool. Really cool is all I have to say. It's an adjustment. It's definitely an adjustment, but it's a good one.
Okay, so I'm gonna sort of wrap things up now, and just ask like the last few stuff I ask everyone. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask is, so going back to when you were just leaving school as an 18-year-old, what advice would you now give yourself, having gone through all of this stuff that you've explained for the past like hour and a half? So
just chill out. Do you know what I mean? Like, enjoy, like, I think there's real value in learning to enjoy the stage of life that you're at. And there's real value in being able to look at the moment that you're in and just, be in moment, rather than constantly looking forward at career or constantly looking forward. Because I think, as I said, law is very competitive, so it's often from first year people were thinking, how do I get a training contract, or how do I get this? And when I first walked in, I had no idea what any of this stuff was, and I was just like, what's going on? So I would have just really wanted to go back and just enjoy things, and do more things outside of academia as well, because at the end of the day, the work is always going to get done. You're always going to do the work, and you're always going to put in the legwork to get to where you need to go, if you're a motivated and hardworking person. But the things that you do outside of it, the experiences that you have, the wider experience, that is really, really valuable, and you don't get that time back.
Okay, and now we talk about the past, the present, and now look into the future. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? As they always ask in every job interview yet.
Oh man, where do I see myself in 5 years' time? Well, I mean, who knows? But ideally in a practice area that I really enjoy, in a practice area that I, that is something that I'm interested, or actually, yeah, ideally in a practice area where I find the work really, really interesting. I have a couple of ideas of what that might be, but I'm still figuring it out, and that's the whole purpose of this training contract.
Yeah, the reason I asked the 5 years time question is because I just asked you what advice would you give to 18-year-old self, and now technically you're like in that position of 18-year-old self looking forward.
Oh, nice. Yeah, true.
So you're going to go through all that kind of stuff as well.
Oh my gosh, how old do I be in 5 years? 27? Yeah,
27, 28, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Depends what year you're born
so
in.
Then I'll be looking back and I'll be like, oh my God, 5 years ago, what did I know? Nothing.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, you can listen back in 5 years' time, like, oh wow. Things didn't quite pan out
what
that
I was talking about. Yeah, huge disclaimer, guys. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, you say, oh damn, this is Nostradamus here. They're perfectly on point.
What, sorry?
This is Nostradamus speaking, they're perfectly on point. Yeah.
No, I guess you don't really know, to be honest. But
yeah, exactly. The life's full of.
Do another one of these in 5 years, and hopefully by that point I will be able to give answers in 2-minute slots.
Yeah, I've seen the time. It's gone wrong.
It is right. So I start giving advice sometimes, and then it's like, you can give advice work hard, but then you don't want to just be like work hard. You also want to be like enjoy life. There's so much to it, and so much of this, like I feel like you just figure it out, and I'm still figuring things out. Do you know what I mean? Like I still feel
Yeah.
very much like a lot of the time I don't know where I'm heading, or I don't know what I'm, doing. Like you got to the point where you were like, okay, cool, I've ticked off I want to get this grad job. And then it's like now I have to figure out a whole new set of things. And a lot of stuff was figured out, yes, by planning and by being like, this is the kind of place that I want to be, and this is the kind of work I want to do, and this is X, Y, and Z. But often you're going through it and you're feeling like, I don't know how I'm getting to where I'm getting, and you're so unsure and you're so uncertain. And sometimes you just want someone to be like, you know what, that's okay. Like that's how everybody feels. Like everybody doesn't know what they're doing a lot of the time. Like people might have plans, and from the outside it might look like people know what they're doing.
Yeah, no one does. No one's on it. You
Everyone
think,
is just figuring things out, and that never changes. That genuinely never changes. Even, associates, or to be honest, I can't speak to the associates, but trainees or like younger associates, like they are still, everybody's just figuring things out. So it's just nice sometimes, yeah, focus on your career, get the things that you want to get done, do all of the things that make you happy, but don't put so much pressure on yourself to figure things out, because you just never will.
yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to ask you what's the final takeaway you want from the interview, but I think that pretty much sums it up. Like, yeah, took the words out of my mouth. But yeah, thank
Exactly.
you. But yeah, I'll wrap things up there. Thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and yeah, hopefully audience gain some nice insights from that, and hope you can learn from your experiences as well.
Don't make the same mistakes.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and see you guys next week.